Imagine, for a second, you've been dealt the worst hand in the entire game of civilization. You're stuck in the center of Europe with no coastline, no colonies to loot, no oil, no gas, no gold mines, no diamonds, and on top of that, your land is so mountainous and unforgiving that for centuries you could barely grow enough wheat to feed your own people. By every rule of geography and economics, you should be a poor backwater, somewhere people escape from, not a place billionaires race toward. And yet you're not poor. You're Switzerland. Today this tiny country sits at over 92 Zlotys in GDP per capita, holds oceans of global wealth inside its vaults, influences commodity pricing across the planet, and maintains a level of stability that makes much of the world look like a rolling crisis. But here's the part the travel brochures won't say out loud. Switzerland didn't become rich because it makes chocolate and cuckoo clocks, and it didn't get rich by being nice. Switzerland got rich by learning how power really works, by mastering the coldest mechanics of capitalism, exporting violence, selling secrecy, building ultra-high-value industries, profiting from other people's chaos, and making itself so hard to touch that the world decided it was safer to store money there than anywhere else. So, for this story, leave your moral comfort at the door, because we're breaking down the 6 pillars of Swiss wealth. Welcome to the vault. Pillar 1 is what I call the blood export, how violence became capital. If you picture a Swiss person today, you probably imagine a polite banker or a calm hiker in the Alps. But if you lived in Europe in the 1500s, seeing Swiss men marching your way was not charming. It was terrifying. Before they were bankers, the Swiss were among the most feared fighters on the continent, not as defenders, but as professional hired soldiers. And the brutal truth is the Alps were poor. If you were a young Swiss man surrounded by rock and thin soil, with siblings and not enough food, you didn't have many options. Switzerland's resource wasn't oil or fertile land. It was tough, hardened men who knew how to fight. So Switzerland turned violence into an industry. The cantons built an organized, state-backed mercenary system, signing formal contracts, capitulations, with foreign powers, especially France and Spain. Think of it like a medieval business deal. Client is a king. Service is battlefield domination. Payment is gold up front plus wages. Switzerland didn't just fight wars. It earned from them. And that matters because, while much of Europe was burning money on conflict, Swiss elites were accumulating hard currency. Officers returned home with chests of gold and silver, and in a place with little to buy, that created something incredibly powerful, a surplus of capital. And when you have excess capital, you don't just sit on it. You start lending it. That's the quiet pivot most people miss. The jump from mercenary to banker wasn't a moral transformation, it was a business upgrade. Financing wars pays better than fighting them, and you don't get stabbed for it. By the time Swiss neutrality became a modern identity in the 1800s, Switzerland wasn't starting from zero. It was standing on a war chest built over centuries. Lesson: when you don't have resources, you export a service, sometimes a terrifying one. Pillar 2 is the silence of the gnomes, the invention of modern banking secrecy. Because having money isn't enough to become rich on Switzerland's level. The real trick is becoming a magnet for other people's money. Switzerland's unique selling proposition became simple. We won't tell anyone you exist. People love to say Swiss secrecy goes back to medieval times, but the ironclad version, protected by law and prison time, was forged in a very specific modern crisis. Early 20th century Europe is shattered, governments are broke, and countries like France and Germany are desperate to claw back tax revenue. They start looking for where the wealthy are hiding cash. Surprise: Geneva and Zurich. In 1932, a major scandal erupted when French police raided a Swiss bank office in Paris and uncovered thousands of high-profile French citizens secretly banking in Switzerland. At the same time, Nazi Germany rises and begins tightening control over money, while the Gestapo tries to pressure banks and track accounts, especially targeting Jews and political opponents trying to move assets. Switzerland is squeezed from both sides. One side wants to tax it, the other wants to seize it. So in 1934, Switzerland passes the Federal Banking Act, and Article 47 turns secrecy into a criminal matter. If a Swiss banker reveals an account holder's identity, they can go to jail. That one move turns Swiss banks into a global black hole for capital. And it didn't matter who you were, a Jewish family trying to protect savings, a dictator hiding stolen wealth, a corrupt official, a tax-dodging executive. Switzerland became the place you could disappear your money. Which brings us to the uncomfortable chapter everyone argues about: Nazi gold. During World War II, Germany looted vast amounts of gold from occupied countries, and horrifyingly from victims of the Holocaust. Many places refused to touch it. Switzerland, however, exchanged that gold for Swiss francs, giving Nazi Germany hard currency it could use to buy critical materials from neutral states. Estimates often cited put Switzerland at the center of this pipeline. After the war, neutrality became Switzerland's shield. We were just doing business. And even though reparations and settlements came much later under pressure, the financial reality had already solidified. Switzerland had become the world's vault, holding assets tied to winners, losers, victims, and villains alike. That flood of capital didn't just sit in basements. It funded Swiss industry cheaply, enabling long-term investment and R&D at rates other countries couldn't match. Pillar 3 is the alchemy of necessity. High-value manufacturing. If you're landlocked and mountainous, shipping heavy goods is a nightmare. So the Swiss made a brilliant pivot. Don't compete in heavy industry. Compete in value density. Maximize value, minimize weight. Don't turn wallers of steel into a $2 horseshoe. Turn it into something tiny, complex, and worth thousands. Watches became the symbol. But the deeper empire is precision engineering. The machines that make the machines. If a company needs ultra-precise tooling measured in microns, Switzerland is often where that capability lives. They didn't try to make everything. They specialized in the component so precise that if it fails, the whole system fails, and that gives you pricing power. Pillar 4 is what I call the pirate phase, the roots of big pharma. Look at Switzerland's corporate giants, and you'll see how dominant pharmaceuticals became. And the reason Basel became a chemical powerhouse wasn't romance, it was opportunity. In the 1800s, Germany led the world in synthetic dyes and held patents tightly. But Switzerland didn't even have patent laws until 1907. So Swiss manufacturers copied formulas, undercut prices, and built an industrial base fast. Germany called them thieves, Switzerland called it business. Then, once the money and chemical know-how existed, the pivot to medicine was natural. Similar processes, bigger margins, global demand. Even when disasters hit, like the 1986 Sandoz chemical fire that poured toxic material into the Rhine, devastating aquatic life, Swiss industry didn't collapse. It absorbed the hit, cleaned up the image, and grew larger. And pharma became a national hedge in recessions. People may stop buying luxury watches, but they don't stop buying medicine. Pillar 5 is the invisible empire, commodity trading. Walk through quiet Swiss towns, and you'll see glass offices with names most people never notice. But these companies move the world's oil, metals, and grain on paper at staggering scale. Here's the absurdity: Switzerland has no major oil fields, few mines, little grain production, and no ocean access, and yet an enormous share of global commodities is traded through Swiss firms. How? By becoming the broker and deal maker for planet Earth's resources. A key figure in building this world was the infamous trader Mark Rich, who helped reshape oil markets by cutting direct deals with sanctioned regimes and bypassing the old cartel structure. Switzerland, with low taxes and a legal environment that didn't punish certain kinds of sanction, busting the way other countries did, became the ideal base. His legacy helped turn Switzerland into the control room for commodity finance. This is where entire nations can end up taking pre-financing deals, cash now in exchange for years of future resource exports. Basically payday loans at state scale. Switzerland doesn't have to dig the mine or drill the well. It profits by controlling the contracts, the timing, the spreads, and the paper. Quick question for you. If you could make a fortune legally trading oil with a brutal regime, would you do it? Or would your morals stop you? Drop a yes/no in the comments. Finally, Pillar 6 is the porcupine strategy. Monetizing paranoia. You can't be the world's piggy bank if everyone believes someone can smash the pig and take the money. Switzerland's safety isn't passive, it's engineered. During World War II, the country was surrounded, hated by Hitler, and theoretically vulnerable. But the Swiss made invasion look like a bad deal. Their doctrine was simple: if you enter, we destroy the roads, collapse the bridges and tunnels, retreat into fortified Alps, and make occupation expensive and unrewarding. They built hardened infrastructure, bunkers, and a mindset of total resistance. That psychology didn't vanish. Switzerland long required bunker capacity, built shelter systems that exceed population needs, and maintained a culture of armed readiness through conscription, while still keeping crime low. And all of that feeds a premium that's hard to price, but easy to feel. When investors smell risk, they pay extra for a place that looks like it can survive anything. Because when you're choosing where to park wealth, you aren't chasing excitement, you're buying protection. And that brings us right to the modern safe haven premium. Because if you put your money in a US bank, you worry about the dollar inflating,